homie that, owned this previously before me made $50 million.
Where is Rick Ross getting all of this money?
Rick Ross spent nearly 2 decades telling the world about his wealth. The cars, the massive estates, the private jets, the luxury lifestyle. His entire image was built around being one of the richest figures in hip-hop. For years, he made it clear that money was never a problem and that he was operating on a completely different level from everyone else. That is why the internet exploded when photos surfaced showing Rick Ross flying economy class. Seriously, people could not stop talking about it. One moment, he was known for private jet flexes, and the next he was sitting in a standard airline seat with the tray table down. Social media lit up the second those photos started circulating, and the reactions just kept coming. What made it even crazier was that Ross actually responded, and his explanation sparked even more debate, jokes, and viral clips. But the flight photos were only one part of the story. At the same time, questions began surfacing about his concert ticket sales. And we are not talking about tickets moving a little slower than expected. Reports showed promotions offering buy one get one free deals, yet there still seemed to be challenges filling seats. Think about how surprising that sounds. A major artist offering extra tickets, and fans still were not rushing to grab them. That is when things started getting really interesting. Here you have a rapper who was once estimated to be worth around $100 million at the height of his success. A man who built a reputation as the biggest boss is suddenly facing online jokes about flying commercial and dealing with questions about event attendance. The contrast alone had people talking nonstop. So what happened? How does someone rise to the top of the rap business and then become the center of conversations like this? More importantly, what does it say about the image, branding, and luxury lifestyle that fans have been watching for nearly 20 years? To understand that, you first have to look at just how successful Rick Ross was during his peak. Between roughly 2012 and 2016, various reports estimated his net worth somewhere between $75 million and $100 million. And that was not just money from making music. Revenue was coming in from multiple businesses, partnerships, investments, and entertainment ventures all at once. His Maybach Music Group label was a major force in hip-hop during that period. The roster included artists like Meek Mill, Whale, and Gunplay, names that were generating real attention and significant revenue. The label's business relationships with major companies brought in serious money and helped strengthen Ross's position in the industry. On top of that, he was earning from album sales, streaming revenue, and touring. Back then, Rick Ross shows attracted large crowds, and live performances were a major part of the business. But music was never his only source of income. One of his most talked about business moves was Wingstop. Ross regularly highlighted his franchise investments, and reports suggested he owned more than 24 locations at one point. As the brand continued to expand, those restaurants became a valuable part of his business portfolio. Add in endorsement deals, brand partnerships, and his connection with Belaire Champagne, and it becomes clear that his wealth was not tied to a single lane. Multiple streams of income were working at the same time. For years, that empire looked unstoppable. Then came perhaps the biggest symbol of Rick Ross's luxury lifestyle, his mansion in Fayetteville, Georgia. And this is not just a large house. It is a full-scale compound. We are talking about 109 rooms, the largest swimming pool in Georgia, its own go-kart track, acres upon acres of land, and a property that was once valued at around $10 million. Ross reportedly purchased it for about $2 million in 2010, which many consider one of the smartest real estate moves of his career. At his peak, the image looked incredibly powerful. A major record label, successful business ventures, a Wingstop empire, a famous mansion, touring revenue, endorsement deals, and brand partnerships. Rick Ross was not simply pretending to have money. At one point, the numbers backed up the lifestyle. But eventually things started to look different. And that is where the story becomes complicated. Because the way people discuss Rick Ross's finances today comes down to one major idea: spending big to make everyone else feel small. His public image was never just about success. It was about displaying success louder than everyone else. And there is a major difference between building wealth and flexing wealth. Building wealth means using money to create more money. Flexing wealth means spending money so strangers online can say, "Wow." For years, Ross leaned heavily into the flex. The cars, the jewelry, the massive parties. the private jet image, the mansion lifestyle. From the outside, it all looked untouchable. Now let's talk about the cars, because this part is wild. Over the years, Ross has been connected to an enormous collection of vehicles, including multiple Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Lamborghinis, custom lowriders, and countless other luxury rides. Some of these vehicles cost more than many people's homes. And this was not just about owning one or two nice cars. It was an entire collection built around status. Every vehicle added to the image of the biggest boss. But every vehicle also came with insurance costs, storage expenses, maintenance bills, customization work, and depreciation. The Flex was not just expensive to buy. It was expensive to maintain. We are talking about a fleet designed to be seen. These were not simply cars for transportation. They were part of photos, videos, social media posts, and a carefully crafted message. Rick Ross had so much money that ordinary rules did not apply. And the jewelry was no different. Ross spent millions on custom chains, diamond pieces, and luxury watches worth more than many people earn in a year. He wore them proudly, posted them frequently, and made sure everyone understood the level he was operating on. But this is where the spending begins to look less like luxury and more like pressure. Because the real issue was never just buying expensive things. It was keeping the entire lifestyle running every single day. A 109-room mansion sounds incredible until the bills start arriving. The promised land is massive, and massive properties come with massive expenses. Staff, security, utilities, repairs, landscaping, maintenance, cleaning, none of it comes cheap. That kind of estate can consume enormous amounts of money every month, whether the music revenue is flowing or not. Then you add private flights, travel costs, entourage expenses, studio bills, label responsibilities, and the non-stop demands of a luxury image. Suddenly, the picture becomes much clearer. The money going out was enormous. And even though Ross once had major income flowing in, that kind of spending can eventually outrun almost anyone. That is the crazy part. A fortune approaching $100 million sounds impossible to burn through. But not when the lifestyle is built to impress instead of last. The entire machine was designed to look powerful, loud, and untouchable, not necessarily to remain stable forever. And that brings us to another major piece of the story, the Flex itself. Because flexing was not just something Rick Ross occasionally did. It became part of the character, part of the music, part of the interviews, and part of the business image. Understanding that helps explain why people are reacting so strongly now that the image is being challenged. Ross was never subtle about it. For years, his wealth was not just a flex. It almost functioned like a weapon. The message often felt straightforward. I have more than you, so I am above you. That is why this situation feels different. When your entire brand is built around being richer than everyone else, people remember every flex. They remember the private jet talk, the luxury lifestyle, the moments when regular people seemed beneath the boss image. So when that same person is photographed sitting in economy class, the reaction becomes bigger than laughter. It feels symbolic. Because this is not really about a plain seat. It is about an image cracking in public. For years, commercial flights were treated as something beneath the lifestyle Ross promoted. Then suddenly, the man known for luxury travel is sitting in a regular cabin surrounded by everyday passengers. The internet was never going to ignore that. Not after years of Maybach talk, mansion talk, jet talk, and biggest boss energy. People instantly understood why the image felt so shocking. This was not just a random travel moment. It felt like a direct hit to the entire brand. Photos and clips began spreading online showing Rick Ross sitting in what appeared to be a standard economy seat. Regular row, regular space, regular travel experience. That is what made people lose their minds. For nearly 20 years, Ross presented himself as someone who moved exclusively through the world of luxury. Private planes, premium travel, high-end cars, and massive estates. Then suddenly there he was in a seat that looked nothing like the lifestyle he had been promoting. The photo became bigger than a funny airport moment. It looked like a contradiction. The kind of image people screenshot, repost, zoom in on, and joke about endlessly. Fans and critics alike started connecting the dots. They saw the economy seat, then looked at conversations surrounding ticket sales, discount promotions, and financial rumors, and they began asking a bigger question. Is the biggest boss actually running low on money? Then Ross offered an explanation. And that only made things more interesting. According to Ross, He was flying commercial because his private jet was getting a Starlink upgrade. That was the explanation. His jet was supposedly unavailable while new internet equipment was being installed, so he took a commercial flight instead. But many people were not convinced. Because if someone truly operates at the private jet level and their aircraft is unavailable, the assumption is that they simply charter another jet. That is the whole point of having access to that world. And even if that was not an option, people still had questions. Why not first class? Why not business class? Why economy? That is where the skepticism really started. The Starlink explanation did not fully explain why he ended up sitting in a regular economy seat. The response almost became more entertaining than the original photo. Comment sections were ruthless. People dissected the explanation from every angle. To many critics, it looked like Ross had been caught in a moment that did not match his image and was trying to turn it into another luxury flex. What made it worse was the confidence behind the explanation. Instead of simply saying he took a regular flight, he doubled down on the idea that his private jet was being upgraded. The message seemed intended to reinforce his luxury status. Instead, it gave the internet even more material. Because once people feel like a celebrity is trying too hard to explain something, they start digging even deeper. That is why the moment spread so quickly. It was never really about the seat itself. It was about what the seat represented. For a rapper whose entire brand revolved around luxury, power, and living above ordinary standards, economy class looked like a crack in the armor. And the Starlink explanation turned that crack into a meme. But believe it or not, the economy seat headlines are not even the biggest challenge facing Rick Ross's image right now. The bigger conversation revolves around ticket sales. Reports and online discussions have raised questions about demand compared to the peak years of his career. And then came one of the most talked about developments: buy one get one free ticket promotions. For many people, that felt surprising. This is the same artist whose image has always centered on luxury, exclusivity, and premium status. That is why the promotion became such a major talking point. To critics online, it seemed completely at odds with the larger-than-life boss image fans had grown accustomed to. Soon the conversation shifted from flights to ticket discounts, and everyone had an opinion. Some compared it to a luxury brand suddenly offering deep discounts to generate demand. Whether that comparison is fair or not, it shows how strongly people connect Ross's image to ideas of status, success, and exclusivity. And even after the promotion, the criticism continued. People debated attendance numbers, venue demand, and whether the excitement surrounding Rick Ross today is the same as it was during his peak. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, several factors help explain why these conversations keep happening. The first is simple. The music industry has changed dramatically. Hip-hop moves fast. The artists dominating headlines today are often very different from the artists who dominated 10 years ago. During the early and mid-2010s, Rick Ross was one of the biggest names in rap. His albums, label, features, and business ventures kept him at the center of the culture. But the industry never stands still. New stars emerge. New trends take over. Audience attention shifts. Many younger fans buying concert tickets today grew up in an entirely different era of hip-hop. They may know Rick Ross's biggest hits, but they do not necessarily have the same connection that longtime fans developed during his peak years. Meanwhile, his original audience has gotten older. People's habits change. Some attend fewer concerts. Some focus on other priorities. Some simply engage with music differently than they once did. When you combine those shifts with an ever-changing industry, it becomes easier to understand why ticket demand may look very different from what it did at the height of a superstar's career. That is simply how the music business works. Popularity does not stay frozen forever. Every artist eventually faces the challenge of remaining relevant as trends evolve, audiences change, and new stars arrive. Many critics argue that Ross has not fully made that transition, and that has become part of the conversation surrounding his career today. Then there is the image issue. When a major part of your brand is being wealthy, powerful, and untouchable, every headline that challenges that image gets amplified. The economy seat photos, the ticket sale discussions, questions about business ventures, all of it started stacking together. Suddenly people were no longer looking at separate stories. They were looking for a pattern. And that matters because the Rick Ross experience was always bigger than the music itself. Fans were not just buying songs. They were buying into a luxury fantasy, a success story, the image of a boss who always seemed 10 steps ahead. Once people feel that image is changing, reactions become much stronger. That is why these conversations have generated so much attention. People are not debating one flight or one concert. They are debating an entire image that has existed for nearly 2 decades. Now let's talk about the business side. One of the strongest parts of Ross's financial story has always been his Wingstop investments. For years, people pointed to those franchises as proof that he was making smart moves outside of music. And to be fair, franchise ownership can be a powerful business strategy. When a brand is growing and locations perform well, the results can be impressive. But many people overlook an important reality. Owning franchises is not the same as collecting effortless money every month. These businesses require management, staffing, oversight, maintenance, and ongoing investment. Many factors can affect performance, including competition, customer demand, management quality, local conditions, and changes in consumer behavior. Success is never guaranteed. Even strong brands face challenges. And maintaining a large portfolio requires constant attention. That is where things can become complicated. Running a major franchise operation is not easy, especially when you are also managing a music career, public appearances, partnerships, and everything else that comes with celebrity life. Owning restaurants and successfully operating restaurants are two very different things. Over the years, reports and discussions have suggested that parts of Ross's business portfolio have faced challenges. When people look at those reports alongside conversations about his finances, they begin wondering whether some of the systems that once looked incredibly strong are performing at the same level today. The larger issue is that income streams change. A business that once generated impressive returns may not continue performing the same way forever. At the same time, the music industry itself has changed dramatically. Streaming became dominant. Album sales declined. Many artists had to adapt their business models. When multiple revenue streams face pressure simultaneously, people naturally start paying attention. That is when conversations begin about whether the lifestyle being displayed publicly still matches the financial reality behind the scenes. And that is where the contrast becomes difficult for critics to ignore. You have discussions about ticket promotions, debates about business performance, and viral moments like the economy flight photos all happening during the same period. Whether those issues are connected or not, the public often views them as parts of one larger story. Then there are the costs associated with maintaining a luxury image. Massive properties, travel expenses, security, staff, vehicles, business operations. The overhead can be enormous. And those costs do not disappear simply because public attention shifts elsewhere. That is why so many people have become fascinated by this story. It is no longer just celebrity gossip. It has become a conversation about the difference between being wealthy and looking wealthy. Because those are not always the same thing. Real financial strength is often built on assets, investments, and systems that continue generating value whether the spotlight is present or not. What many critics are debating is whether the image Ross spent years promoting eventually became larger than the financial foundation supporting it. For years, luxury was front and center. The cars, the jewelry, the private jets, the mansion, the constant displays of success. All of it helped build a powerful brand. But maintaining a brand like that requires constant effort. Every luxury purchase, every flashy image, every major flex becomes part of a performance that must keep growing to remain impressive. The audience expects more. The image gets bigger. And the pressure never truly goes away. For a long time, it worked. The music succeeded. The businesses attracted attention. The lifestyle matched what people expected. The entire package felt larger than life. But luxury lifestyles come with a reality many people forget. They are extremely expensive to maintain. And when revenue slows or public perception changes, the image that once seemed untouchable suddenly faces intense scrutiny. That is why the economy class photo became such a major moment. To many people, it was not simply a picture of Rick Ross on a plane. It felt like a moment where public image and public perception collided. Whether fair or unfair, people immediately compared that image to years of private jet talk, luxury branding, and larger-than-life success stories. Then came the response, which only fueled the conversation further. The Starlink explanation became a headline of its own, and critics argued that the detailed defense created even more questions. Instead of ending the discussion, It gave people another angle to debate. And that is what makes this entire situation so surprising when you look at the full arc of Rick Ross's career. Because before the memes, before the ticket sale discussions, and before the economy seat headlines, there was a success story that many people genuinely respected. Whether you loved his music or not, Ross built an impressive career. He came from Carol City, Miami, entered one of the most competitive industries in the world, created major records, launched business ventures, invested in franchises, expanded into real estate, and built a globally recognized brand. Those accomplishments are real, and they played a major role in his rise. Many people point to those business moves as some of the strongest chapters of his story. The franchise investments, label building efforts, and real estate purchases showed a side of Ross that extended beyond music. But over time, the luxury image often became the headline. The conversation shifted toward the cars, the jewelry, the mansions, the jets, and the endless displays of success. For some critics, that image eventually overshadowed the business achievements themselves. Now, with economy flight photos circulating online, questions about ticket demand continuing to surface, and debates surrounding various business ventures, people are viewing the bigger picture differently. The conversation is no longer just about Rick Ross the rapper. It is about whether the image that helped make him famous still matches what people believe they are seeing today. And perhaps the biggest loss is not even financial. It may be credibility, because money can sometimes be earned back. But once people stop believing the image you sold them, rebuilding that trust becomes much harder. That is why the reaction to the economy seat photos has been so loud. People are not simply laughing at a travel moment. They are reacting to the possibility that the untouchable boss image may not be as strong as it once appeared. After years of hearing about private jets, luxury cars, giant mansions, and endless wealth, many people feel like they are seeing a different picture. And honestly, this may be one of the clearest examples of what can happen when the performance of wealth becomes more expensive than the wealth itself. Rick Ross did not just spend money. He spent money building an image that was supposed to look bigger, louder, and richer than everything around it. But eventually, every image needs real support behind it. The cars, the jewelry, the mansion, the travel, the flexing, all of it costs money to maintain. And when income slows, attention shifts, and audiences begin asking questions, that same image can quickly become a target. The biggest boss in economy class. Regular row. Tray table down. That is the kind of image the internet never forgets. And now the question is bigger than a single flight. Can Rick Ross rebuild the brand? Or has the boss era taken a serious hit? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is this just a rough chapter for Ross? Or is it the beginning of something much bigger? And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives. There are plenty more stories on the way, and you will not want to miss the next one.